welcome to the CORY Morgan Show. Here we go, another week. The world's still turning, but my Lord, it's screwy, isn't it? The news cycles are just changing faster than we can keep up with them. A lot of the same stories, but just trying to interpret them as they change and twist and maneuver. So we'll try and work through some of those today. Lots to cover. I got a good show as always. I like to think coming up. I got Franco Terrazzano is going to come out from the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, and he's always good to chat about, current taxes, maybe what's going on with the carbon tax. Is it going to go? Are the Liberals going to do it? Plus, what other taxes are we going to look at as we have an election pending? After that, actually, we're going to have our own Sean Pulzer. He's down in Houston at that petroleum show, and he's been rubbing shoulders with and writing on. Just check the stories out on the Western Standard. He's been putting out great reports from down there. Team Alberta is down there and making some great deals for the Alberta energy sector. So, speaking of an Albertan resource, this episode is sponsored by New World Precious Metals, and they're based right here in Alberta. Now, keep in mind, years we got inflationary money printing and rising debt, and they're decimating your savings. Gold and silver, they're the only currencies that have held their value, and they've done so for thousands of years. 30% gains last year. Can your RRSP say it did that? Check them out, guys. New World Precious Metals. They offer unique platforms to help protect and grow your hard-earned wealth with gold and silver. It's, got to hedge your bets these days in this crazy world. At least you know that precious metals are always going to be worth something. Check them out, newworldpm.com. Good to see Jordan Paradoxy in the comments scroll. Yes, this show is live. Use those comments. Chat with me. Send things to my guests. Send ideas. I see them all. I don't necessarily react to them all, but I appreciate them all. Just trying to keep things civil. All right, let's get on to just what I want to talk about. This period of stagnation we're stuck in. Canada desperately needs a prime minister. The House of Commons has been virtually useless since last fall when the Conservatives began filibustering due to the Liberals' refusal to release documents related to their green slush fund. By the time things finally collapsed for Trudeau at Christmas, parliamentary business had already been piling up. Now, more than 2 months later, we still don't have a functional prime minister, and the prorogation of Parliament has killed every bill on the order paper. President Trump's taken full advantage of Canada's leaderless state as he shakes his northern neighbor like a dog with a rag doll. Yes, the Liberals, sure, they coronated Mark Carney in the farce of a leadership race, and yes, Carney is going to be enthroned in the prime minister's seat, but come on, until he faces us in a general election, he's just as much a lame duck as Justin Trudeau was. Carney has no seat, no mandate, no history in elected office to draw from. He won't be able to craft or pass legislation, and he has a sad collection of Trudeau's leftover MPs to try and cobble a cabinet out of. And worst of all, of course, we're in the midst of an unprecedented trade war, and we're being pummelled not only with Trump's tariffs, but now China's jumped into the fray. We got premiers across the country trying to do what they can to mitigate damage, and they've taken different approaches. Doug Ford has taken a bluster, threaten, and retreat strategy, while Danielle Smith continues her American excursions to try and foster diplomatic relationships. There's not been much evidence that either of them have had any impact upon Trump, but time will tell. But what Canada really needs is a prime minister with a strong mandate and a large caucus to run things, while he, and I'm saying he because there's no woman running for the role, takes on the trade war. Only after an election, though, is this possible. Thankfully, all signs are pointing to an election soon. The Liberals have been taking out ads, and they've been acting in campaign mode. There were fears, and I was fearing it, that there was going to be a deal cut with Singh to try and hold on to power until fall, but even Singh sounds like he's jumping into campaign mode now, too. Hopefully the campaign period's as short as we can, though. Not only must there be an election, though, Canadians have got to pay attention. I know it's something we're not typically good at. Legacy media is invested in this re-election of the Liberal Party, and they're going to be tough. It's going to be tough to get unfiltered information during this campaign. Liberals are going to continue to hide Carney from independent media, and the legacy outlets will ensure he never faces tough questions. That's the problem when you get subsidized media, folks. I wouldn't be shocked if the media group scheduled the French debate at 2 a.m. so people can't witness Carney being eaten alive by both Poilievre and Blanchette with his rudimentary French. The Liberals haven't changed. They've cut off the vacuous head of Justin Trudeau and attached the bland but still ideological head of Mark Carney. The bulk of the party hasn't changed, and the rot remains within just as much now as it did in December. Now, polls are indicating the Canadians are falling for the new coat of paint slapped on the old corrupted party. I'd like to think that bounce was exaggerated and will be short-lived. Who knows? Carney's rebranding the carbon tax, but the end payer remains the common citizens as the price of consumer goods are going to continue to rise. Will the move manage to hoodwink voters who are ready to turf the Liberals, though? I certainly took a plank out of Poilievre's campaign. Poilievre's also going to be challenged with perceived associations with President Trump. While Poilievre's never been close to Trump, the Liberals are running ads to create the impression that he was, and it looks like it might be effective. Most Canadians want somebody who can stand strong against Trump and the trade war, and if they feel Poilievre is compromised, it could bode poorly for the Conservatives. Every election is important, but some are more important than others. The 2025 election is the most important election we've faced in a decade. Nobody's exactly sure what Trump's motivations are. I'm not even sure if Trump knows what his motivations are. What we do know, though, is Trump gets off on pouncing upon weakness. Trudeau is as weak as they come, and Canada's become even weaker during the transition from Trudeau. If the Liberals are put back in power, Trump's going to chew Canada apart piece by piece and spit it out. The economic damage would make the COVID years look prosperous. Trudeau is gone, but the hangover remains. It has to be flushed from the halls of power. Canada must have a fresh face at the helm with a solid electoral mandate. So we got that chance coming soon, guys. Let's just hope we get it right. Because, boy, we sure love stepping on rakes. All right, well, that's what's got me going today to start things off. Let's check in with our news editor, Dave Naylor. Dave, what do you got today?
Good day, Mr. Morgan. I've got bad news.
Oh,
I'm slapping a 50% tariff on you for appear on your show from now on.
Okay, well, you could triple what I pay.
I get 50% of nothing. It's still nothing, isn't it?
Yes.
Well, if I ever hear the word tariff again, it'll be too soon.
Oh, I know. You're probably going to hear it a few times in the next...
in the next 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you mentioned we've got our Sean Polzer, our energy writer down in Houston at CERA Week. It's the biggest oil show in the world, and there's nothing but sultans and sheiks and Danielle Smith down there. So he's got a good column on how well Danielle Smith seems to be doing down there. He's also got a good exclusive from Brian Jean that Alberta is going to start using their royalty barrels to build pipelines. It's way above my head, but Sean explains it all in the story. And he's just finished covering a Danielle Smith keynote address to the convention. So hopefully that's up as I'm speaking. If not, it'll be up very shortly. We've got some final figures now on how much Trudeau has spent on gender projects outside Canada. $11 billion. It's with a B.
Yeah.
$11 billion.
But I mean, think of all those little skinny African children who now aren't so confused about whether their pee-pee means they're a boy or a girl.
Yes, I suppose.
This was important.
Money well spent.
Oh, yes.
We've got a good exclusive from our Jen Hodgson on a digital currency, as you know, which seems to be around the corner. And it's JCCF did a big in-depth look at it and all the dangers and why it's a very bad thing. So that's up on the site right now. Oh, no, here it is. Tariffs. Yeah, we slapped some on the States. $30 billion worth, I guess. So that's up there now. And the Liberals are saying they're going to eliminate the April 1st carbon tax increase, but they're not quite sure how they can do it because it's mandated by law, but there's no parliament sitting. So they're scrambling to try and figure out how they're going to get this stopped by April 1st. But it just shows you the idiocy of what's going on down there in Ottawa.
Well, in a slight way, I mean, it's only going to cost us so much more. I almost hope that they can't find a way to do it, because having that increase in the midst of an election campaign will just help remind people this is what the Liberals have to offer for you.
Exactly. It would be just poetic, wouldn't it?
It would. All right. Well, that and I saw a video of police laying a beating on someone.
Oh, yes. I should have mentioned that. There was an arrest in northeast Calgary yesterday. Apparently a police officer pulled a man over for a dirty license plate. The man didn't want to talk to the officer and walked away from him into a convenience store. Then when the gentleman came out of the convenience store, the officer tried to connect with him again, and that didn't go well. The officer put the man under arrest, and the fight was on. So a very dramatic video there on the site of it looks like 4 or 5 Calgary police officers jumping on this guy and trying to restrain him, all over a dirty license plate.
Well,
I know. Sometimes if you drive around these days, every license plate is dirty.
Yeah, it sounds
right?
Like the pretense for pulling him over might have been shaky, but the bottom line is, even if they're being jerks, don't start struggling. It never ends well.
Do what the police tell you to do within reason, right? If you ask for an ID, do it. You see all these examples of people being shot and killed in the States just by not listening to basic police instructions.
Well, Either way, that's where I think the cameras are kind of a good thing. Both ways.
Yes.
Hey, police overstep as well. They have.
Oh, absolutely they do.
Record these things and let us judge and have a look and see who was being the moron in these cases.
Yep.
It looks from what I saw that this gentleman perhaps might have taken a few more knocks than it was warranted, but he was also being stupid.
Yeah, he was being stupid. And the problem with these 30-second videos is you don't get the context.
No.
Right? You don't get a sense of what kind of a airhead this guy was in dealing with the officer and why he wouldn't just say yes sir, no sir. So a lot of times they get what they deserve, but the police have put out a statement. They seem to be standing by their men.
Well, and if ACERT investigates, we'll know in about 11 years whether there was a problem done or not.
There you go. We'll hopefully still be on there.
Well, we'll see.
My tariffs could be up to 75% on.
Well, okay. Well, I'll make that promise for 11 years from now.
There you go.
All right.
Keep it to it.
Thanks, Dave. I'll
You
let
got
you
it.
back to the newsroom.
Thanks.
All right, guys. Yes, and the reason we're covering all those stories and Sean's down in Houston covering those things and the rest is because you guys have been subscribing. We don't take taxpayer dollars. We rely on you guys, and that makes us accountable to you guys. So this one I got to nag and remind you. Take out a subscription, guys. $10 a month, $100 a year. It's well worth it. You're investing in yourself. You get past that pesky paywall, and it helps us. It helps us expand, keep covering these things, get past legacy media that won't ask those tougher questions. So westernstandard.news/subscription. Take one out. If you have already, thank you. We really do appreciate it. And if you haven't, come on, get on there. Nag other people to do it too. Okay, I saw a good question there from a commenter, Kenzie Kraken. It looks like asking if I think Smith is wasting taxpayer money going to the United States. That's a good and fair question. I'm, typically support a lot of what Premier Smith does. And I think in this case, going to this Houston show, if it's a trade delegation with a mandate in mind and a goal, yes, I think in this case, it's a good use of taxpayer dollars as her as a representative of Alberta. Now, we might see them doing stupid things that we'll find out about later, like if they're having themselves, $50 shrimp cocktails and booking $5,000 a night hotel rooms. People like Franco Terrazzano will expose that, and we will beat on them for it. But we'll see until after the fact. But I think the trip in itself, in this case, is good. Now, I think it's more questionable about whether taxpayers should fund her going to speak to Ben Shapiro. That's a little different now. That's getting a little more political. That's getting a little more partisan. Perhaps the UCP should foot the bill for that sort of trip because I think she's going to Florida to do that one. So I guess my answer is sometimes I think the travel is justified and sometimes it isn't. And we'll see. I mean, waste can happen. Not can't happen. It does happen with every government. There's ones we like more or less than others. It's a matter of trying to mitigate and get the best you can out of the bunch and try to keep them accountable. That's why it's important for us to stay on the case of the politicians we like, just as much as getting on the case of the ones we don't like. I have not been thrilled with the budget performance of the UCP. I really expected better. Danielle Smith, we've known her a long time. She's a fiscal conservative. She's always talked the talk. And here we are with this giant deficit, with a projected extension of that deficit for some years to come. We're supposed to be conservatives, aren't we? That means you cut things. They're afraid of cutting. Afraid of cutting. We've got to cut sometimes. We're spending too bloody much. If the UCP can't cut, just imagine, now you see that's where we don't want to race to the bottom, but it'll be much worse if you even get the left in. So let's correct the current government and get on their case. Premier Smith's been dealing with other things. A member left over the budget, an MLA. There could be some unity issues in caucus. That's a separate issue. But the thing to keep in mind, that member left was because he complained he wasn't getting enough funding towards his constituency. He wasn't complaining about the overspending that was going on in that budget. So he wasn't coming from a conservative direction. But it turned into a problematic thing that blew up for them. It's politics. It's back and forth. But that's where I do say some of the onus is on us. It's on us to pay attention. It's on us to ask the tougher questions. It's on us and independent media to ask those questions, of course, and to try to be fair about them, but not give a pass when it's somebody who we feel we like or is more ideologically inclined along where we are on things. Yes, and Vamp Fashion say, can you imagine our lefty friends screaming if Danielle Smith cut anything of actual substance? Yeah, I know. And just on that final note, I saw a press conference a little while back where Naheed Nenshi, the leader of Alberta NDP, was going on about Danielle Smith's cuts. Not one person in that scrum said, what cuts? That's all they had to ask him. What cuts? She hadn't cut anything, Nenshi. But he can just blather away and they'll leave it uncorrected as if she's been cutting. It's it's going to be hard to get a responsible government. We got somebody who does like asking those questions and getting on their case all the time, and that's Franco Terrazzano, the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. So, hey there, Franco, how's it going?
Hey, Corey, great to be on the show with you today.
Yeah, it's been a while. We're overdue, I think.
Yeah, man, I love coming on the show. Love what you guys are doing. So just happy to be here.
Right on. So, well, this is basically kind of like the Super Bowl or the Olympics for people like us, political wonks and so on. We've got a federal election coming, a whole lot to cover. I mean, I understand some of the generalities of where you're going to be coming from, but what are going to be the main priorities the Canadian Taxpayers Federation is going to be pushing on in these next couple of months?
Yeah, well, there's three, right? We can go into details, but there's three. Number one, scrap all carbon taxes. Right? Like we've heard now the Liberal leader, Mark Carney, say he's going to end the consumer carbon tax. Okay. All right. But guess what? He still wants to hammer businesses with a carbon tax, and he hopes you won't notice when those businesses pass on those costs to you through higher prices. So number one, end all carbon taxes. Number two, balance the budget. And balance the budget by making spending go down. Like, look, for the last decade or so, this government in Ottawa has been on the runaway spending train, wasting money like crazy, hiring 108,000 extra government bureaucrats. So what we need to see is a plan to balance the budget within 2 years by making spending go down. And finally, we need to see not just ending all carbon taxes, we need to see massive tax cuts, okay? I mean, everyone knows what's going on with the U.S., Canada tariffs and all that kind of stuff. Like, that's going to hurt our economy. But what we have to do is focus on making Canada the most competitive place on earth to work, to invest, to grow business. And all that starts with massively cutting taxes.
Yeah, so one of the things Dave mentioned, it sounds like the Liberals are having a difficult time. They want to extricate themselves from the consumer carbon tax, and there's a rise in it coming on April 1st.
Yep.
But it sounds like they might have painted themselves in a corner because Parliament's not sitting, and they might not be able to actually get that out of there before the election.
No. Don't buy that spin.
Okay? Well, good. I want you to confirm what's going on there. Oh. We appear to have lost your sound there, Franco. Okay, we'll keep working on things there, Franco. I'm not sure. Somehow we've lost your sound for the moment. And you're still not coming, which really sucks because I really wanted to hear the answer for that. I'm not sure what's happening. Okay, we're just going to kind of pop you out there. Maybe log in and out and see if we can't get that to correct back on, because I really, really wanted to hear that answer. There we are. It sounds like we were under a misconception. So the Liberals do have a way to avoid that raising of the carbon tax. So that's interesting because you'd think, I mean, and Franco will clarify that in a moment. You'd think they're going to be eager to get themselves out of that. That tax really beat the heck out of them in the polls. It really was an anvil around their necks. I mean, Trudeau was so stubborn. He did not want to back off on that thing, and it was just killing them. And now, I mean, that's part of what Carney's hoping that helped him was getting out of that tax and seeing if, and maybe that's what's turning around a little bit of electoral fortunes. So we got Franco in the lobby again. Let's see if we got that rectified. How's it going, Franco?
Can you hear me now?
I do. Yes. Yeah, I do. I got you finally. So you were just explaining, thank you, how the Liberals can get out of raising that carbon tax April 1st.
Yeah, so you're right in the sense that the carbon tax is still scheduled to go up 19% on April 1. But the Liberals, when you hear Minister Guilbeault saying, oh, I don't know what to do, that is just factually incorrect, okay? In the legislation that brought in the carbon tax, it gives Cabinet the power to set the carbon tax rates, okay? So with a stroke of a pen, today, the government could effectively kill the carbon tax by setting the carbon tax rate to 0. Okay? Don't believe me? Well, how did the federal government remove the carbon tax from furnace oil for 3 years? It didn't do it by passing legislation, but it did it with regulation. Okay? So the government has done it before by removing the carbon tax for furnace oil for Atlantic Canadians predominantly, and the government can do it again by immediately ending the carbon tax today. Okay, so the government doesn't need to pass any legislation. The act itself gives Cabinet the power to put the carbon tax rate on all the different fuels to zero.
All right, good. So they've got no excuse, and we'll remind them of that in the weeks to come here. So getting on to other things, one of the, we're in the midst of this bizarre trade war and the tariffs and counter tariffs and the rest going on. Something you pointed out, I mean, a strategy, we're not hearing that tactic much. I mean, it sounds like among the many things, I mean, it depends on the hour what President Trump may or may not want from us, but he does say he wants to draw Canadian businesses down to south of the border. Taxing further up here wouldn't help us defend from that. I mean, as you said, let's streamline, make this a great place to do business and cut business taxes. It'll make it even harder for President Trump to snipe them.
Yeah, I understand the sentiment, right? Like when someone pushes you, you want to push back. I understand that sentiment. I understand that emotion. But like, folks, retaliatory tariffs are just a tax on Canadians. Right? So when President Trump imposes tariffs, well, that is a tax on American businesses and is passed on to American consumers. Okay? So just because President Trump wants to increase taxes on Americans, that doesn't mean that Ottawa should then go ahead and increase taxes on Canadians. You know what I mean? Like, that's the problem. Like, Trump's tariffs will hurt Canada's economy, but you want to know what's going to hurt us even more? Knee-jerk retaliatory tariffs. It's just another tax on Canadian citizens that Canadians can't afford. Now, that doesn't mean that Canada should just sit back and do nothing. No. We should take the U.S.'s lunch money by making Canada more competitive, okay? So number one, immediately scrap all carbon taxes. Carbon taxes make the necessities of your life more expensive and blew a $12 billion hole in our economy last year. Number two, immediately cancel the capital gains tax hike scheduled for next year, right? Nothing tells entrepreneurs to leave Canada louder than a looming capital gains tax hike. But number three, as I mentioned, right, we have to go on a major tax cutting campaign. Okay, so Canada ranks about 31st out of 38 industrialized countries on individual tax competitiveness. That is awful. We rank 26th out of 38 industrial countries on business tax competitiveness. That is also awful. And on both measures, we rank behind the United States. Okay, so if you want to really do some damage to the US, you shouldn't be imposing new taxes on Canadians. We should be doing the exact opposite, cutting taxes left, right, and center.
Yeah, well, Milton Friedman put it excellently with tariffs when he pointed out saying, well, it's like you're all sitting in the same boat. Somebody goes and shoots a hole in the boat, and then you respond by taking out a gun and shooting a hole in right next to it, so you're both sinking at the same time. It doesn't help. But, and that's fair enough, like when you start taxing us further, but American tariffs on Canadian products do harm our outward sales. Like, it's going to lead to a reduction in sales. So it is punitive to Canadians. I know I don't expect you will like using taxes as a tool for much of anything, but what about countermeasures such as an export tariff when it's trying to put it on to the other end of the bill?
Yeah, I mean, Corey, look, I'm not suggesting that U.S. tariffs aren't going to hurt Canada and Canada's economy. That's not what I'm suggesting. I agree that U.S. tariffs will hurt Canada's economy, but you know what will make that pain worse? Knee-jerk retaliatory tariffs that make life in Canada more expensive. That will make life more expensive, and that will make things worse. And look, Corey, I am very skeptical that a trade war prolonged with Canadian tariffs will work. I'm very skeptical. Maybe they will work, but probably they won't. You know what's more likely to push Trump to back down? Pain felt by Americans, Congress people, governors who are watching prices soar, their economy blow up, and the stock market crash, right? So I understand the emotional feeling here. When someone pushes you, you want to hit back. But Canada's knee-jerk retaliatory tariffs will land like a punch across our own jaw. If we really want to be serious, what we have to do is make Canada more competitive than the United States. If they want to impose taxes on their own citizens, we should not be doing the same thing. And let me just bring up some breaking news from, I believe, earlier this morning, where Australia's Prime Minister essentially said the same thing that I'm saying, where they're not going to impose retaliatory tariffs because that is a tax on their own citizens.
Right. So on top of that, something else that kind of surfaced, I know this might be kind of been out of left field, but Canada put that 100% tariff on Chinese electric vehicles last fall, which has now led to China taking a run at Canadian goods with tariffs, and it's causing harm to Canadian farmers in particular. I mean, a lot of our canola and other outward crops, China's a big customer. This swirling mess, I mean, I suspect your answer is going to be the same. Our best way out of it is to start just dropping our own bloody tariffs.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So two things come to mind. So Corey, I'm not well versed in that specific issue, but two things come to mind. Number one, isn't it kind of crazy that the federal government and some of the provinces are putting taxpayers on the hook for billions of dollars for battery factories in the hopes that Canadians buy more EVs, and then they slap tariffs on more affordable EVs, right? Like that doesn't make any sense. And also to Corey, I just want to bring back my past point that what I think will really stop this tariff war is actually pressure from the United States, whether it's Americans, American lobby groups, Congress, or governors. Like you mentioned, farmers. Well, what led Mr. Trump to reduce the tariff on potash? It was pushback from American farmers who rely on Canadian potash for their inputs.
Well, and likewise, I imagine with these tariffs on steel, aluminum, the rest, any American companies that have to buy those products, their CEOs or representatives have got to be flooding to Washington right now, at least behind closed doors, begging Trump, lay off, man. We can't make money if you keep doing this to us.
Yeah, and Corey, I'm really happy to be on this show with you and your audience talking about tariffs, because let me just plant the seed, right? The answer to making our economy better or life in Canada better, the answer is not giving Ottawa more power to tax us and intervene in our economy. And that's exactly what a tariff is, regardless if it's the initial tariff or a retaliatory tariff, okay? A tariff is a way for Ottawa or the central government to impose itself in the economy and to impose itself with new taxes that make people's lives more expensive. We should not be in support of giving Ottawa the tool to tax us more.
So an unfortunate thing, as we're just kind of running things out, is that basically the two major parties running in this general election are both calling for counter tariffs right now.
Correct. Yeah. It's unfortunate. I mean, I actually don't see much on the tariff specifically. I don't see any of the major parties saying no tariffs, no new taxes on Canadians. The difference that I'm hearing, and again, we haven't actually seen any concrete plans from the Liberal government, is how they're going to spend the tariff or tax revenue, right? We've heard some of the media float this notion of how the Liberals might put in some pandemic era level of spending, right? Whereas the Conservatives, they say that most of the revenue from the tariff tax will go back towards tax cuts. So that is really the only difference that I'm hearing on this specific issue from the major parties.
Well, it's going to be a long month in some. I mean, and everything changes day by day, too. I mean, part of the issue is the instability. I mean, the tariffs are on, the tariffs are off. They're going to be large. They're going to be low. I'm sure it's going to change a lot more before we get to talk again. So before I let you go then, I mean, you guys keep track of that on our behalf, which I really appreciate, and you're always putting stuff out on it. Where can people find and or support the Taxpayers Federation?
Yeah, and given all this uncertainty, that's why it's more important than ever that we clean up our own backyard, cut taxes, cut red tape here in Canada. Folks, head over to taxpayer.com. You can see a lot of stuff. You can follow us all over social media, Canadian Taxpayers Federation, me on Twitter, @Franco_nomics. And on this tariff issue, let me just say that the Canadian Taxpayers Federation teamed up with an American taxpayer group to write an op-ed in the United States, essentially calling on both our leaders to cut it out with the new taxes.
Excellent. Well, I hope both of them are listening. It'd be a refreshing change. So thank you for joining us and for the work you guys do. Franco, I'm sure we'll talk again soon.
Hey, thank you so much, Corey. The pleasure was mine.
Right on. So, yeah, guys, and honest, they're not paying me. I just want to say it is important to follow them. They get the stuff out there. They're coming from the right side of things. As I said, media is not holding the politicians accountable enough, or at least not legacy media, but the CTF does, and they put it out there. So check them out, Canadian Taxpayers Federation. They're a good group out there to make sure we're trying to keep those politicians as honest as we can. I mean, it's always an endless push and pull game. And as I kind of said in my opening monologue, it's so important for us to be informed when we go into this election in particular, because we're having a hard time getting unfiltered information from any of the leaders, particularly the Liberals. So, get some of those outward groups that are going to ask those questions, or at least put out the stats and the numbers and cut through the BS on your behalf so you don't have to try and translate it. All right, let's pop down. I see in the lobby we've got our energy and business reporter, Sean Polzer, down in Houston, who I envy terribly. I love Texas, but it is a working trip, though. He's down there at the petroleum gathering. I don't seem to have any sound out of Sean right now, though. Hopefully that pops on there pretty quickly. And yes, his mic appears to be muted for the moment, but he's down there and you can see him, and it's nice and sunny wherever he's sitting. And we've had a lot of stuff going on down there. As Dave mentioned, stories have been coming up out from down there with Sean. With the Smith government has been proposing basically a royalty in kind sort of thing to backstop pipelines as well. I believe there was a deal at least to have an agreement with Japan on possibly getting liquid natural gas on the go down there, with increasing our exports on that. And these gatherings are important. Somebody else mentioned me. Oh, there we go. Okay, I've got Sean finally. Okay. God, it makes it hard. This two of you guys in a row got me. I got to keep babbling away when I got no sound. I appreciate it.
It's this technology thing,
Well, send you to
the internet's way oversubscribed here, as you can imagine. 10,000 people all hanging on Wi-Fi.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I remember that from
and yes, I've managed to put on some Texas barbecue, a couple pounds at Derek Bilderbrandt's expense.
Well, that's the only thing where Texans, I don't dare utter it when I'm down there, but I still think their barbecue is overrated. They use too much mesquite, but there's still a lot of good food to be had down there. That's for sure, though. So you've been following the Alberta delegation around. What's the top highlight you got? I've seen your stories coming up. It's been interesting times.
Well, the top highlight was probably Premier Smith's address just moments ago, barely an hour ago. We've got a breaking news update up on the site. I think it's safe to say that she wowed the crowd, although there's definitely a lot of homegrown partisans. But I think that the message on the tariffs, I saw your segment briefly with Franco, is starting to register with the people that at least know anything about oil and gas around here. And of course, being in Houston and being at CERAWeek and IHS, we've got, some of the biggest luminaries of the oil world all gathered in one spot.
So what kind of reception has there been actually for Canadians down there? I would hope that the business community is just looking at the dollars and cents and not taking it personally. It's not like we're, seeing the sporting community booing each other's anthems and other such foolishness. I mean, they're just talking about dollars and cents down there, I imagine, not bitter.
Well, absolutely, dollars and cents. And, the message here is that the American energy advantage is predicated on the partnership with Canada. Like, they really couldn't do it without us. So just assuming that there is a 10% tariff, which is not as bad as a 25% or even a 50% tariff, it seems to be going up by the minute here. Just even a 10% tariff, if they were to back those barrels out, Canadian barrels out of the market and replace them with American barrels, they're exporting about an equivalent amount that they're importing from us, and they're getting our oil cheaper. It's a higher value product because you get more byproducts out of it, like diesel fuel and, even wax and sulfur and these kinds of things out of that heavy barrel. So it's actually worth more. And they would have to replace them with their own higher cost barrels, and it would actually reduce that 4 million barrels a day of exports that they have. And if you recall, you're an oil guy, that, the oil export ban has only been lifted in about the last less than 10 years. And it's the same story with LNG. And basically less than 10 years, they've gone from zero to being the world's largest LNG exporter all overnight. And, shifting around those flows threatens that what they call energy dominance. They're creating a department of energy dominance. No word if Elon Musk is going to head it up.
Well, LNG is the big thing these days. I mean, it's finally a means to export that natural gas, which normally was just a domestic product. I mean, this last couple of decades, it's really become a commodity. I remember seeing the facility being built down in Louisiana. I was down there some years back, and they built a massive LNG terminal and quickly. But up in Canada, what did it take us 15 years to get one that still isn't quite operational yet on the West Coast?
Absolutely, yeah.
So, I mean, it's nice to have all these aspirational ideas about exporting more, but are we hearing anything concrete about how we might be able to actually get it done?
Well, that's actually the mantra here, and I mentioned that in the article. Is it's not so much drill, baby, drill, because the amount of resources that are available is well known. Alberta government is putting out a resource assessment later on today, if it's not already out by the time I get there. But Smith was talking about it briefly in her presentations. Trillion barrels of oil, thousands of trillions of feet of natural gas. So now the problem is how do we, get those resources to market? So the new slogan around here is build, baby, build. It's not so much drill, baby, drill. And the sense is that is the American advantage because they can get these projects to market really, really fast. It's like you said, the whole LNG infrastructure down here on the Gulf Coast. I'm gonna call it the Gulf Coast, not the Gulf of America, not the Gulf of McDavid, not the Gulf of Alberta, right? The Gulf Coast. It's gone from zero to in just less than a decade. It's impressive, I must say.
Yeah, hopefully we could learn from them. I mean, we got lots and lots. It's a whole separate show to how we would deal with getting things done across Canada or whatnot. But I guess it's double-edged. I mean, we know we could hopefully build that infrastructure to get stuff for exporting down to the Gulf Coast relatively quickly, but it also leaves us very vulnerable to a single customer if and when we have further disputes.
Absolutely. So I spoke to some folks from Tourmaline, Calgary-based Mike Rose company, biggest natural gas producer in Canada. They're actually the first one to actually start shipping LNG through the Gulf of Alberta. But, there was a comment made, like just even with the number of projects that are on the West Coast that are already set in motion, once those come online, we are going to be the world's fourth or fifth largest LNG producer. It's still not too late to get into that game. And Danielle Smith's announcement yesterday with the government of Japan to, sign this out, there is no business case for LNG, Corey. You know that. We know that. Our prime minister has told us how many times there's no business case for LNG. And yet the LNG demand around the globe is going to double within the next however many years. And it's because of data centers. It's because of electric cars. It's because of pulling all these other countries out of energy poverty. It's because of the wars in Ukraine and in Russia. So I don't think that the demand side of the equation is really the problem. The problem is, like I said, getting those trucks and shovels to the ground.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's a cleaner energy too. Maybe some countries are starting to realize it.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. And that's another theme of the conference here is realism, energy realism. So the idea is let's focus on the emissions. Let's not focus on the type of fuel. We're not, there's this debate about blue hydrogen and green hydrogen and all this stuff. The idea is let's not worry about all that, right? Let's just stick to what we know best, and what is actually going to reduce emissions, and that is natural gas.
Right on. Well, how much time is left on that conference? Are there some more kind of bigger events or meetings or conferences you're looking forward to yet?
Well, we're kind of hitting the high point here. I think the peak is today. There's Premier Smith is probably on her way to the airport as we speak. Brian Jean, I did an interview with him. Hopefully we're going to get that up on the site here pretty quick, assuming that I can get a decent internet connection. And he's going to be around here until tomorrow, and then things start winding down on Friday. Friday is kind of a cleanup day. Pack up. It's like cleaning up your dorm.
Yeah.
And
well, right on. Anything else you want to let us know before I let you go back to dipping into that Texan barbecue, maybe some Tex-Mex?
And yeah, the Texas caviar. You know what Texas caviar is, don't you? It's
You're
like
talking
the
about mud
black
bugs?
eyed. It's like black eyed peas. Texas caviar. It's black eyed
Oh,
peas
okay.
and pico de gallo. And yeah, no, they've got fresh produce in here already. Today is a nice spring day. It's about 24 degrees. The humidity's not too bad, so it's actually nice patio weather, believe it or not. So
Well,
that's, you know what I'm going to be doing tonight.
yeah, yeah, you can kiss my ass. All right, well, either way, enjoy it, and I appreciate the great coverage though you've had so far and the stuff that's been coming, Sean. So I'll let you get back to finding more of those energy scoops, and I appreciate you coming on to talk to us about it today.
Okay, thanks a lot. Nice to see you, Corey.
Right, see you, Sean. So that is our Sean Polzer. Yes, down in Texas, in person, catching the stuff going on. I mean, that's where deals get made, right? You know, with getting the professionals together in the same room. As for the earlier question about, you know, whether or not the trip's worth it, it sounds like it could be. I mean, again, as I said, you know, our politicians can waste money. They can be foolish when they're down there, but this has a lot of potential merit. Jacqueline, a commenter, saying, what emissions is Sean talking about? CO2 is not a pollutant. Yeah, that's a separate discussion in a sense. I'm sick of people calling CO2 a pollutant as well. We exhale it. It's not, you know, this evil poison. I mean, if you have nothing but CO2 in a room, yes, you will drop and die. But if you have nothing but oxygen in a room, you'll drop and die as well. It's that incredible balance of different gases that allows us to breathe. But the reality is, it's a concern with emissions in general anyways. And if we're going to have generation, for example, though, if I'm just talking what's cleaner and what's not, a lot of these countries are burning loads and loads of coal. They're still burning loads and loads of coal. It's what's most economic for them. And that's the way it goes. India, China, all around the world. Europe still burns a lot of coal for their power generation. Natural gas is cleaner than that, at least. So if we're going to look on that, I'm finding it interesting, though, with the big electric shift. It seems to be falling apart. You know, that dingbat Trudeau sunk $50 billion of ours into these battery plants out in eastern Canada. It sounds like most of the plants weren't even constructed yet at this point, partnered with European companies that have been going broke and scaling back. So that was a catastrophe. Part of trying to save his ridiculous electric vehicle mandate, because he was banning the production of proper vehicles, I think, by 2035. I'm pretty certain no matter who wins the next election, that's going to be walked back. It's a stupid commitment that we can't make. That's falling apart because nobody's making them, you know. And but to try and protect it, he threw 100% tariff on Chinese-made electric vehicles. So if there was any chance, and I don't think there ever was, but if there was any chance of a big wave of electric vehicle assumption within Canada, it would have been with an influx of affordable Chinese-made EVs. But Trudeau stopped that by forcing the prices of them to double through a tariff. So that screwed his own plans, because now as well, who was the main electric vehicle maker? Oh my lord, it was the evil Elon Musk with Tesla. That's still the main player in the electric vehicle market. And now all the progressive Canadians said, we can't buy Tesla, we can't support. Well, now, where is this EV wave? Where is it going to come from? It's not. It's stalling. It's dying in its tracks. And, I mean, the bigger discussion as well, just another point from Paradoxy. Doug Ford needs to answer as much as Trudeau for the money burnt on EVs and battery plants. Absolutely. The Ontario government pumped in loads of subsidies too. The bottom line is it always comes down to the same rule. Governments have got to stay out of these businesses. They've got to. It's not their role. It's not their place to pick winners and losers. I don't care what their motivation was. I don't care why they think it was a good idea. It almost always backfires. They can't do it. Alberta was one of the worst in the past. We had if people remember Novotel, it was supposed to assemble cellular phones. This was back in the 90s. Good idea. You know, look at what happened with cell phones since the 90s till today. But the government ran it, and they put hundreds of millions of dollars into it. And guess what? It went broke. Only government can go broke getting in on the manufacturing of cellular phones just as they were about to explode onto the world market. Likewise, the government back then had Swan Hills plant. That went broke. The magnesium plant down in High River, anybody who knows Alberta can drive by a big orange brick building sitting there empty. It's been empty since the 90s. That was $500 million tax dollars went into it. Stay out of business, and that includes electric vehicles. If you want EVs to actually make a possible run, the best thing the government can do, which is contrary to so much of the nature, get the hell out of the way. Get out of the way. If Trudeau really wanted to see a bunch of EVs all over the roads, he would have gotten out of the way. Perhaps the Chinese ones would be affordable. Who knows? I doubt it. But all the same, that would be where the better chance was. But now he's got nothing. There's the great thing to see, as I'll close off the show, as we're finally seeing Trudeau exiting. And as he did, like a clown as usual, people saw that picture of him walking out of Parliament with his tongue out again. Like he's just a dingbat. But he's got no legacy to point at. He really doesn't. I mean, they're all trying to, puff him up and everything and talking about how wonderful he was. What's he leaving everybody? A massive debt, massive deficit, a totally divided nation, electric vehicle mandates that went nowhere, a carbon tax that completely failed. He has no legacy. He has nothing he's going to be able to sit and point at and say, look what I got done while I was in Canada. Closest he has was this giant investment he's talking about with a high-speed rail line out in Quebec and Ontario that obviously isn't going to get built, but it will waste billions more dollars of ours as they try. So that won't be a legacy. It won't be the Justin Trudeau train line. No, we're going to look at him just thankful he's gone. And nobody's going to have fond thoughts of him. His history is not going to treat him well. The only other part of his legacy I'll close, as Dave mentioned earlier, though, 10 years, the government of Canada spent $11.2 billion on overseas gender initiatives. Imagine being in a third world country, not able to get clean water, having difficulty finding employment, bad housing, and what do you get from Trudeau, some dildo showing up at your place with drawings to show you that you might not be a boy, you might be a girl, because that's what's most important to you. When all you want to do is friggin' eat. All right, guys. Hey, tune into the pipeline tonight. I'm going to have another show. It's an election special. It's going to be coming on Friday, and it's going to be moving probably to a live format on Fridays after that. Nigel Hannaford's doing his thing. Derek Fildebrandt. We got lots of content. Subscribe to these channels. Keep watching them. Keep sharing them. I appreciate you tuning in today, and we'll see you on the next one.